So he's like, give me 10. And he's like, give me 10. So the kid does 10. He's struggling. He's like, he gave me 10 more. He's like, are you feeling that? He's like, is this getting hard? He's like, yeah, it's hard. I'm like, hey, give me 10 more. So he just kind of like snapped this kid out of it, broke him down, and then gave him the teaching moment of like, yeah, we don't talk to mom like that. Welcome to the Weaponized Marriage Podcast. My name's Ryan.
And I'm your host, Kendra Hewitt.
And we're here today to talk to you about what we decided was going to be a topic about modeling for your kids. But this came off a conversation we had after attending a wedding this weekend. And we were talking to the father of the groom. And one of the things...
No, the father of the bride.
Oh, sorry, father of the bride. Man.
Who we didn't know until this weekend.
No. So, well, I had met him before, but...
Oh, yeah, I had.
He threw out this interesting, I guess it was teaching point. It was something that one of his values, and he had said that one of the most important things for him in a marriage, or that he wanted to model with his wife, was that he admires his wife deeply, and his wife also admires him. And he said, as soon as you stop admiring one another, he said that it's basically just a downfall from there, which, admiring the other person, that could be respect. It could be, respect, admiration. And ultimately you love and respect the person, right? So once you start to lose that admiration, that's something that is like really, really important as far as like not only what he wants in a fulfilled marriage, but also what he wanted to model for his kids.
Yeah, which specifically in this case was his daughter.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that just opened up a conversation between us about how we interpreted it. And for me, the first thing I thought of was a conversation that I have often, I think, with patients over the last 18 years, really. I've you could call it interviewed thousands of people at this point. I've had lots and lots of conversations with people. And when you spend enough time with people, you get to know them and you start to learn about, what's going on in their life. And you can tell the people that are like, really happy with where they're at, and especially in their marriage and in their relationships. And I noticed that there was a trend with a lot of people, and you probably, for those listening, have heard of people doing this, is that they'll stay married for the sake of the children. And instead of, for the sake of their own, I guess they consider their own happiness, because they don't want to rock the boat with their kids' lives. So in other words, they stay together just long enough till the kids leave the house, go off to college, and then they call it quits. Right. And like, listen, I'm not.
And they function as roommates, but they pretend that it's not.
So exactly. If you're like already in agreement with your spouse at a certain point, it's like, hey, we're just going to stay together for the kids. And maybe you're like already sleeping in separate beds. Maybe you're already like in an open marriage. Maybe you're like just both deciding you're going to be fucking miserable until the kids leave. Like I am vehemently against this practice. Mostly, and this is like just coming from me, like I'm not a childhood psychologist. I'm not a marriage expert. I'm sure there's people out there that might disagree, but I think one of the worst things you could do is model an unhealthy marriage for your kids. And whether you know it or not, it's like, oh, well, we don't fight. Like, oh, we don't do anything that would like cause our kids harm or concern. But you are, and it's basically a lie of omission. Basically what you're modeling for your kids is like, hey, this relationship I have with my wife, which is, the most important relationship you're going to model your behavior after and your beliefs after. Like, it's not loving, it's not affectionate, it's not caring, it's not necessarily not respectful, but it's not like full of admiration. Right. And you can tell people that are like, they admire their significant other, like, they hold them above anybody else, even the kids, which is why I'm a huge believer of like, your marriage is more important than your kids.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, when that brought us to the second part where this conversation came up with, which was what Steven saying that.
Yeah. And for me, why I'm saying this is from my perspective is because I grew up, my parents really tried, I think, to make their marriage work. And I
Mhm.
think they tried by having more and more kids. I think I think my mom really wanted more children or really wanted a girl, ended up having 4 boys. And they, it was a loving household. Like my parents loved me,
Mhm.
right? Like it's not like I didn't have love. It's that they had a toxic marriage that was always battling about money, always battling about not spending enough time, never enough, uh, always trying to upgrade, life and like living just like right at their means, and it's just always stressful, right? So there was never a time where I remember like my parents were just like doubting on each other or going on dates or modeling the type of marriage that I want to model for Lily. So in that like I had to undo a lot of that
And it
unconscious,
still comes up a lot for
yeah,
you.
a lot of that subconscious programming of what I've observed.
Mhm.
It just that's default. That's kind of the default that I was programmed with, and I'm not blaming them. I'm not saying like, "Oh my god, poor me. I come from like a family of," because my parents didn't divorce till I was 20 years old, right? So I watched this
Which
marriage
was
for
harder,
yeah,
right? Don't
well,
you think?
yeah, I mean, based on the way it ended, first of all, because it
Mhm.
ended really badly. Lots of like drama and drinking and cheating and like awful divorce. But, I was already, like, on my way out, though. I was like I think it affected my brothers and I all differently
Mhm.
based because we're all, like, 3 years apart. So, like, I'm 20 and my youngest brother's 10, right? So it affected us differently based on where we were in our life and based on when the family was fractured, like, I was already off on my own independent, right? But my at least my 2 youngest brothers kinda got dragged along for the ride,
Mhm.
right? Based on whatever parent was gonna take them or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, this is why I'm against that practice of, like, listen, if you already know you don't wanna stay together, like, that's the time to start working on figuring out how to, move on and how to, like, I don't know how to do that well. Like I don't have like advice on like, "Hey, if you know your marriage is over and you're not gonna work on it, like, here's how you do it well for your kids." What I'm saying is like, make a decision. Don't sit on the fence and like wait
Mhm.
5, 10, 15 years
Yep.
and let your kids watch a marriage that's like already dead. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, you just talked a lot.
Well, I have a lot to say about that.
Usually I do the talking, but
Well, I mean, I have a lot to say about it.
so let me ask, there's 2 things that come up on just rehashing this conversation with us. Um, I think when we were at the lowest in our marriage too, one of the things the hardest for me to do as your wife was not throw it in your face when I saw you repeating the pattern that you so vehemently wanted to avoid. And I think a lot of your
Do you think
anger.
you never did that?
Oh, I know what I did it, but there was a lot more times that I kinda held it together where I didn't push that envelope because I
Okay.
knew it wasn't going to help me. But I think that it's so interesting to hear you, but, like, as your wife, before I even knew all of the details that have since come out as you've talked more and more about this, like, with greater detail, was that I could just tell is, like, that there was a war inside you of, like, you didn't wanna repeat this pattern. But at the same time, you didn't really know what would be different. And I think I'm like a huge believer in that, like, there's 2 options in any relationship, right? You can either repeat the pattern, and which many people do, or you can become like, I call it the curse breaker, right? Like you rewire your generational pattern. Maybe that's what you were designed to do. And I think that I know some of the patterns in my family life that I'm looking to undo. And I think that you started to see this. And my question is like, what was the shift for you in our marriage where you started to not only openly admit that you don't want to be like your parents, which is, like I said, sometimes easier for others than most, but, like, what was the shift that made you, like, when we had Lily that you're like even moments like we had both of us had a moment last week where we were like, "I don't wanna be that parent," and I just was that parent today. What was the shift for you?
What was the shift for me for what?
Like, in terms of, like, saying, like, "Hey, my parents did the best they could with the resources they had, but here's where they messed up that I don't wanna repeat."
Well, I mean, first of all, I think that well, the funny thing is like since I was young, very young, I already decided I was like, I don't want this. I don't want like 4 kids. I don't want money to be a scarcity.
Mhm,
I don't want I don't even think I want to be like my dad and like a 9 to 5 employee who's at under the thumb of like a corporation that get to tell you what to do and how much you make and where to go and
mhm,
who to be. I think I just decided I wanted to be polar opposite of how I was raised. Not that it was again, a terrible childhood. It was great,
mhm,
but I knew that there was fundamental things that I wanted, which was I didn't want money to be um, something that was like a scarce resource. I didn't want that scarcity.
mhm,
Number two, I didn't want the stress of having a large family to try to make ends meet. Do you know what I
mhm,
mean? And always be like running around and try to like because to me, like what I told myself is like, oh well, having a big family that's just like
more chaos.
there's always chaos and there's no like connection and
Mhm,
intimacy and there's none of this like none of and not that there can't be because there sure is and some people's are able to do it, but to me, I was like I don't want this version of this life. I want to create something different. So it's
mhm,
like I got, I decided to become a doctor and then start my own business. I decided to move from Canada. I decided to like get married 10 years after my parents did. I decided to have no children 20 years after my parents did. Like I
mhm.
did everything different. But the crazy thing is, like, even though I did everything different, all of the things that I guess were patterns of the things I didn't like were still there.
Yeah, that's what I mean, like, history always repeats itself, so what did you do to shift where you're, like start to get some clarity where you're like, "Hey, I'm not going to repeat this pattern. Here is how I'm going to do that."
Well, I think again, it just comes down to realizing that it's awareness. I was never aware of how I was operating until I was like 36 years old. I was still operating in victim mentality and in scarcity
Mhm,
up until I realized, like, wow, I'm the cause of all of this life that I've created. And like, I'm not happy. This is not what I envisioned. This is not what I want. Even though I thought it was. And the thing is, it was like everything was there that I wanted, but the way I was being wasn't what I wanted.
mhm.
So yes, it was the whole wake up
Yeah, and
call.
I think too that to wrap the conversation with at the wedding this weekend, which like that wedding was so first of all, it was like a very traditional Italian family, right? So it was literally when we sat down, we were honored as guests because we were ones that were truly guests because basically it was family, right? Like
Yeah.
it was all the cousins and all the cousins and all those cousins are really their best friends because they grew up with all the cousins, like old school Italian. It was so special. Like you could
Mm,
feel the love in the room. But back to the conversation with the father, or Alessia's father-in-law was, he started with the admiration, but then he brought it to another place, which was what stimulated our conversation, which was, he talked about how some of the things that he just wanted for his daughter and how much he like admires even Alessia. And, one of the things that I thought was really special, he talked about I don't think he called it the standard, I think he said he called it the bar, like setting the bar.
mhm,
He wanted to set the bar high, and, he was a man that could very clearly articulate, like, his values,
mhm,
and, like, you could tell he was very centered in them.
mhm,
Like, he was in a movable oak on some things,
mhm,
and, it started us the conversation for us of setting the bar on, like, what are things that we want to make sure that, like, A, Lily sees, and here's the things that we don't want her to see.
mhm,
And I talked to you about because I was struggling one day, like, I just had a really rough day with her, and I talked to you about some of the things that like, I was like, "Oh, man," then I said this, like and then I acted this way with her, and I was like, "That's not how I wanna be as a parent." But, like, I think starting to figure out, not only as a parent, but in your marriage, of like, hey, here's the things that I will tolerate within myself, and here's the things that like are not acceptable. Like, I will not do this again. And
Yeah, well,
chances
why
are you might do it again, but
okay,
like,
rather than trying to do it like from a coaching position like you are, why don't you
oh,
just say
sorry.
what happened? Just say what happened. How
About
you're
which part?
saying like, "Oh, I didn't wanna do that or operate that way in front of just say what
I
happened."
can't even remember.
You can't remember?
Yeah.
How was what way did you act that you regret when with Lily?
I was just being really short with her, and I realized, so what had happened was that I realized that I did our morning routine, but I added a project to our morning routine, and she is not a kid that she's very creative.
Mhm,
So, like, I gave her a timeline on a project. The project was she was gonna make a card for her babysitter who
right,
is leaving for college.
mhm,
And, we didn't do it the night before as I had originally planned, and I said, "Listen, we're gonna see Sarah today. I really want you to make this card." And then she got super frustrated with the card. It wasn't the way she wanted it. And then she asked me for help, and I gave her some help, but then she changed her mind and she started, like, ripping up the paper and throwing it, and, like, and she was saying stuff like, "This is not good enough," or whatever, and I was, like, all of a sudden super triggered into this state of when I used to ask my mom for help as a little girl,
mhm,
and about how, like, it was easier for me to just do it and fuck it up rather than get frustrated with her, the level, like, how she helped me. And I realized that I was being like my mom in that moment, where I would get so frustrated, and like I would just, like, I was taking my frustration out on her, and I was
mhm.
like, "We gotta go now. Like, we don't have time to finish this."
That's
Like,
your favorite saying. "We
like,
gotta go. I
and
gotta
I
go."
started to realize while I was in it that I was like, "Holy shit, I just like gave her this project. I expected a 4-year-old to be able to complete this project before we make it out the door on time and all this kind of stuff." And I was like, this was a completely unrealistic expectation. And it started, but like it just like was a kind of a little bit of a ripple effect. Like, I started behind from the beginning of the day because I added something that didn't need to be added. And while the intention was good, I could have just given her a card that I bought without having Lily make a card and had
Mhm,
her sign it. Um and so yeah, so that was where the frustration, and I just really just like, I was like, "Okay." I was like, "What did you learn about it?" I was trying really hard to get myself into, like, "What did you learn today? By what didn't work? What did work?" Um, and I just felt like I was always behind. I don't know, that's what happened, so I don't know why you wanted me to talk about that, because I don't know how I'm gonna relate that back to our topic.
well, I'm just saying you're trying to, like, teach it as a concept, and I'm saying that people relate more to stories when you're telling, like, "Hey, this is what happened to me."
Yeah. Actually, I just thought of a story, though, that I think is even more, it might make me cry, but I don't know why I'm really emotional about it today. I didn't anticipate this happening, but, um
It's okay.
so this morning I was getting a coffee, and when I was getting a coffee, I dropped off Lily at camp, and this little coffee spot I go has like a little coffee bar, and it always has like, it's the only place in town that has a decent coffee. And they had a really long line. And when I was in the line, I couldn't help but notice there was a guy directly across from me, and he had a Vietnam veterans hat on. And he was sitting right next to where you pick up your coffee once it's made. And I decided that, like, this has been something recent. I started in Florida when I was with Lily, and, every time I see a person that has a Vietnam hat on, I will walk up to them and make an effort to say, "Thank you for your service."
Mhm.
So I did to this guy, and I was like, because my dad modeled that.
Yeah, well,
He would
your dad was a Vietnam vet.
Yes, but he would always teach us,
Just
even
so
when we were
people
younger, he was
people
like,
know.
"You walk up
Yeah,
and you say
pay
thank you for your
respect. Yeah.
service." Um, and this cute little old man was totally caught off guard, and he was like, "You're welcome." And, I have no idea how that we got into this conversation, but he started to tell me that he was building I said, "My dad was in Vietnam." And he's like, "Yeah, because most people your age don't even know about Vietnam."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Well, you probably think I'm younger than I am because that's not true." But, um And he said that he was working on a Vietnam Vets Memorial in Ipswich.
Mhm.
And he's like, "Do you know what years your dad was in Vietnam?" Blah, blah. And I was like, "Actually, truly, I don't." I said, "I know he's in the army," and I gave him some details. And he's like, "Well, if you find out," he's like, "you can buy a brick at the memorial."
Mhm.
And so the guy gave me his phone number
Mm.
so I could do this.
Hmm.
And I got in my car and I just like had this moment because I was like, that was something my dad modeled for me.
Mm.
Like, you walk up to people and you say, "Thank you for your service."
Mm.
And I didn't, this is why I said it started in Florida, was the day that I took Lily to the Magic Kingdom when I was by myself.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I was just very sad that day that like I was all by myself at Disney with Lily, even though I was having a good time. But I just wish that like I had like my dad there or family there with me. And this guy came on the train, the monorail, and he sat next to me and he had a Vietnam hat. And it was like this weird trigger of like, remember, dad used to say, always
Mhm.
thank the people. So I did. But I don't know where like this just randomly came like to me. And then so when I sat in my car, I thought about it. It just made me think about like I think my initial when I walked over there, I was like, maybe this guy knows my dad.
Mhm.
And it made me think about how like that my dad hasn't been in my life for 30 plus years, but it's like that's how important modeling is.
Mm.
But the crying in the car for me this morning was like what I wouldn't give to be able to walk and sit at a bar next to my dad and just have a cup of coffee and a
Mm.
conversation. Um, and it just made me think of like that, like we have that opportunity every day with not only our kids, but
Mhm.
like in our marriage to
Mhm.
like model something that regardless of if I haven't saw you yesterday or if I saw you 30 years from now, you're always setting an example.
Wow.
So like being really careful that you are conscious of that. Does that
Wow.
make sense?
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Sorry. Like I
No,
said,
that's really powerful. I
not our
mean,
scheduled programming, but
no, but clearly how important I think this concept is, right? Of like what you do speaks louder, right, than what you say.
Mhm.
Although what you say matters also, but how you like what your kids watch. You forget because it's just like, oh, it's just everyday life. It's Thursday. Let's wake up and let's do the routine and then let's go to school and go to work and then come home and do dinner and then
Yeah.
do bedtime and come home. But in the in the moments in between, right? Like there's opportunity there.
Teaching moment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Teaching and or leading, like,
Yeah,
by example.
and that could be just, like, showing your kids that, like, "Hey, this is how I love your mom," or, like, "This is how I talk to your mom." I saw this
Mhm.
post one time that I loved. Um, this no a mom had posted this, like, "Thank God I'm married to a man who, like, models this kind of parenting," and I don't know why they had the camera rolling. I find that weird when people, like, have their life rolling on camera somehow, but maybe it was, like a security cam. But, it was probably like a 12-year-old kid, boy, and he's like, "Chill out, mom," is what he said to her in the kitchen, and the dad happened to hear this. He's like, "Hey, like, you don't talk to your mom like that." He's like, "Come here." And he made the kid do, like, probably 30 push-ups.
Yeah.
So he's like, "Give me 10." And he's like, "Give me 10." So the kid does 10, he's struggling. He's like, "Hey, give me 10 more." He's like, "Are you feeling that?" He's like, "Is this getting hard?" He's like, "Yeah, it's hard." I'm like, "Hey, give me 10 more." So he just kind of like snapped this kid out
Broke
of
his
it,
state, yeah.
broke him down, and then gave him the teaching moment of like, yeah, we don't talk to mom like that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's pretty good. I'm gonna start doing that to Lily.
Yeah. I know you tried a couple times already. It
I've
hasn't worked out
I've tried,
in your
yeah.
favor yet, but
Yeah, well, 4-year-olds
keep
doing
at it.
4-year-olds doing push-ups is pretty funny.
Yeah. It's more like worms.
Yeah, but it just goes to show you have the choice of like you could just go the default, which is like I think letting your emotions take over. For me, it's like, or even what you're saying is like when Lily's worked up, it's really easy to get stressed out
Oh,
and
yeah.
worked up and then throw it back to her and like, we gotta go. Like, stop messing around. You're dicking around. Like, quit. Yeah, quit stalling. I told you to put
Yeah.
your PJ, your
Yeah.
clothes on 5 minutes ago.
And that's what I was upset at, like, and I was saying, like, "Let's get in the car, you're stalling," all that kind of stuff, and I was just like, "She's messed up because you're the cause of this problem."
Yeah, but the whole point of this is like just having the awareness of
Yeah,
it.
and just, like, I think just, like, to wrap this episode, um, is just, like, starting to be so much more aware of the example you're gonna fuck it up at times, no question asked, like, no one's gonna not make mistakes,
Yeah,
but,
but
like,
the worst thing you could do is go through the motions.
yeah, and I think that's, like, a really good, like, I think that's where you started is, like, about, like, the marriage that, like I said, that they're more like roommates, and they're playing let's pretend to their
Mhm.
kids and pretending that their kids don't really actually know because they know.
Yeah, because they think that like if we keep our kids like in the school and with the same friends and don't disrupt their life, that they're going to be better off
Yeah,
than us either getting a divorce or separating or whatnot, which is in the long run more detrimental than the short-term pain
yeah,
of what has to happen in order for them to have a healthier
yeah,
life.
and it's like, I mean, I'll wrap it with this because this is something that, like, I learned about horses, and then I always think this is something that I learned from horses as a kid, and then it just recently came back up as another message. And it was like when we talk about horses, we always talk about every ride you're either training or untraining.
Mm.
And that same thing goes for yourself, your marriage, your kids,
Your business.
your business. You're either training or untraining. You're either putting garbage in or taking garbage out. Like, there's no side. And then something more recently that one of my trainers talked about, riding trainers, who I really just like am starting to really like respect in terms of her teaching way. And I was talking about how when I was riding, I was like, I used to really think that like having a soft hand, like the connection from from the horse's bit to your hand was kind. And she's like, you know what I need you to do? I need you to relearn that. She's like, I need you to relearn that clear is kind. Because if you have a really loose or like kind of soft hand, you are losing the connection that actually the horse really needs to feel you.
It could be next episode.
Yeah. So like, and she was like, someone once told me this and I never forgot it, is that clear is kind.
It's just like boundaries.
Yeah. And I was like, oh man, I was like, that lesson that day just hit me so deep. And I was like, man, that is a ripple effect to every area of your life. Clear is kind. So maybe that's next episode.
All right. Bring it home.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share it. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to the Weaponized Marriage.
Nice work.
And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.